Right, so we're doing a hand review for Matt that he played at 5:30. So he's dealt Queen Jack on the button. It's a $30 straddle. Now there is a fish in the small blind and the pro in the big blind as well. Um, Main decision points here are so pre-flop. I think the flat is fine. You'd probably be mixing between three betting and flatting at equilibrium, but I certainly feel with a fish in the middle you gain a lot of EV basically just by flatting and seeing a flop post. So I'm fine with the decision to flat. Um, so we'll talk through this hand. Here are the ranges that I've assigned. So in position, that's Matthew. This is the sort of flatting range that I've assigned him. I think it's fairly standard. We do want to be playing a lot of pots with the fish as well, which means a hand like Queen Jack that we might usually mix, I've now assigned as a pure flat as well. Also hands like Jack 10 suited, and 10s, which are generally speaking going to be fist pump 3 bets. I've also gone for a mixed strategy just to take into account the fact that we might want to be calling wider just to invite the fish into the pot. In this case, although the fish does fold, and Hero gets put in a pretty sick decision for like a $2,000 pot. Anyway, let's get into it. So, first things first is that the villain should actually be c-betting pretty much his whole range for 1/3 pot. This makes a lot of sense given that he has the equity edge as well as the EV edge. Mainly this is going to be generated by hands like the overpairs, also the 8x type hands, and even hands like Ace King can be going for thin value given that they have 63% equity, or the suited variant does. So he does actually go for the check though, and at this point, basically our hero probably shouldn't be stabbing too often here. Our hero still has the equity disadvantage. In this case, it does show our hero as having the EV advantage, which I actually think might be inaccurate in practices. I do think that a lot of regs are going to be checking kind of imbalanced here in this spot. I think a lot of regs will be checking hands like pocket eights, aces, ace 8 and king 8 potentially going for check rips as well. If they do think that hero is going to be betting too much here, then certainly I think it's not a bad play exploitatively. Because I do think that a lot of live regs will make the mistake of betting like $200 here when check 2, not really realizing that they're at a massive range disadvantage and could actually be being exploited. And in fact, 62% of the time they still have to be checking. We can see that a hand like Jack 8, for instance, Queen 8 might be being bet too often, especially like 10-8. Even a hand like 7s and 6s might be like pure betting for protection with a lot of regs if they put them on a hand like Ace King or Ace Queen. So certainly I feel like it's an okay play to make exploitatively, although at equilibrium he is losing over $10 of EV by not taking the block line. We'll explore that with node locking later as well. Turn comes the Jack of Spades, and I do think that he needs to be betting a ton now, the 3-better. He needs to be betting pretty much all of his Jack X. Even a hand like 7s or 6s or 9s we can see needs to be going for the block size for protection. There's a ton of overcards and gutters and things like that we do need protection from as the out of position player. We can see that he's actually going for larger sizings with pretty much all of his Jack X. Either 2/3 or pot. Basically, he wants to get it in by the river. Now, similar concept can apply here as the concept that applied on the flop, which is if he does expect hero to be betting too often, particularly if he perceives Matt to be a bit of a lagtard, then he might actually be check ripping hands like Ace Jack, King Jack, which need less protection but would like to check jam as well. He could even be check jamming a hand like pocket eights here, sometimes aces. So I think in practice actually, against this sort of range composition, by the way, villain does actually check, which is a little bit capping, but at the same time I think the composition of the range of villain is likely going to be looking like something like ace king, ace queen, which want to get to showdown, those types of ace high hands, and also a fairly polar value checking range, so maybe like eights, ace jack, king jack that do just want to check rip as well if he's playing that explode line. And because of that, I actually do like Hero's sizing. I think it's a really good sizing. Hero actually chose to bet 150 in practice, which I actually think it might be a bit too big. I would actually advocate going for a size like 110, that would be a lot better, mainly because we're basically just betting for protection and thin value against a hand like Ace King, Ace Queen, which is still drawing in correctly, even if we bet like 1/3 pot here or 40% pot. The other thing you want to think about is that our kicker isn't actually that strong, especially versus the polar checking range that Villain might have if he has like Ace Jack, King Jack. We certainly don't want to get check ripped on, so going a size like 200 and then getting ripped on for like 850 against Ace Jack would be, really, really bad. So I do like going smaller, basically. Um, and just kind of pot controlling in one sense, because in order for him to check rip now, he has to jam like 850 into a pot of 400, which is kind of ridiculous. So because of this reason, I do like Heroes play anyway, and obviously the solver does. We do need to be going for value with any sort of Jack X, pretty much, even Jack 10. Cool. So Hero plays this fine. Now here's an interesting spot. Basically, the villain needs to be check raising a lot of Jack X. Pretty much all of the Jack X plus, even like Jack 10 needs to be check raised, which I don't think villains will be doing as frequently. So for that reason, what we're going to see on the river is probably a more capped version than what villains might look like in reality. Simply because, it's still hard for villain to check raise to $850. So even if Matthew bets 150 on the turn. So because of that, um, I don't think a lot of live regs are going to be check raising top pair, top kicker, or top pair, second kicker as frequently as they should be in theory. So that's going to actually affect the river decision, as we'll see. So we can see here that basically there's no leading range here. The out of position, although he's at an EV advantage, the in position's equity advantage. Their EVs are actually 50-50, and because out of position has the worst position, he should generally be doing a lot of checking in these kinds of spots. So he does, however, go for the lead jam, and we can see that our MDF is actually really, really wide here. And actually Ace 9 is going to be a profitable call, which is quite ridiculous. So we can see that against an optimal villain, we definitely need to be stacking off Queen Jack. That being said, though, we didn't take into account the fact that villain is likely not going to be playing the sort of flop strategy that Solver advises him to be doing. He's probably going to be doing a lot of explode checking, which means that his range is going to be much stronger, I think, which will very clearly affect the river decision as well. The other thing is, because the optimal villain does a lot of check raising on the turn with Jack X, that's going to mean that a live villain who might not check raise as frequently is going to have a higher distribution of Jack X. So if he decides to like thin value rip Ace Jack or something, then certainly we can see that our MDF would obviously not be as wide as Ace 9. So I'll actually run another sim and see how that one goes. And I'll do that in another video, obviously, because the sim's going to take a while to run.